Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. So as I've been introduced, I'm Laura Finney. I'm a Senior Portfolio Manager at EPSRC as part of UKRI. And I work in the energy theme, looking after the hydrogen and alternative vectors and fuel cells portfolio. I do have my finger in a number of pies across UKRI. I also work on the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge, which is primarily looking at bringing the industrial clusters to net zero by 2050. And just for transparency, I also wanted to point out that I am actually currently on a part-time secondment day a week into the Bayes Hydrogen Economy team. But I'm here today in my capacity as EPSRC, so I won't be answering any questions on behalf of Bayes. So for those who are less familiar with UKRI and the structure in which EPSRC sits, I just wanted to give a quick background. So UKRI was formed in 2018 on the back of the NERST review in order to bring all of the 7 research councils, Innovate UK and Research England together to provide a greater strategic vision for UK science and a stronger voice into government. So EPSRC is part of the kind of umbrella organisation that is UKRI. So UKRI's aims really are to deliver the foundations for excellent research and the best environment to do that so that we can push the frontiers of human knowledge and ultimately drive impact, both economic, social and cultural for the UK, and help the government deliver on its 2.4% of GDP to be spent on research and innovation by 2024. So EPSRC is obviously a constituent part of UKRI and is the largest funder of university research in the UK, with over £4.6 billion invested in research and training in the engineering and physical sciences remit specifically. 57% of our portfolio is collaborative with industry or other partners, and 55% of our portfolio is multidisciplinary as well. And we've primarily focused on the kind of TRL 1 to 4 range. So our portfolio is very broad. It covers all kinds in the engineering and physical sciences space, from the obvious engineering, physics, chemistry, all the way through to maths, cybersecurity, digital economy, a few others, and of course, energy, which is where our hydrogen portfolio sits. Although it's really important to note that although it sits within the energy theme, many of the other disciplines mentioned here have impacts on hydrogen as well and perform research in those communities, which is highly relevant. So the EPSRC energy theme mission really is closely linked to the government's ambitions to meet net zero by 2050, which are now in law. And we've moved on from kind of a focus on the energy trilemma to this new target post publication of this report and the law being introduced in 2019. As part of this report, obviously, I won't go into the details that Richard has very well covered earlier. We've seen that we need to decarbonise a number of sectors, and although decarbonisation has happened to some extent since 1990, we still have a long way to go. And hydrogen does have the ability to impact a number of these sectors, which I've highlighted here. Now, it's important to note that we don't think that hydrogen is a silver bullet and that it will form a part of a wider energy system and other solutions, but it is likely to have impact in at least some or all of these sectors. And it's also likely to have quite a major role. Richard's covered this earlier a little bit as well, but obviously in order for that to happen, we need quite a lot of hydrogen and a shift to low carbon hydrogen production, as he rightly said. And we as an organisation are quite supportive of the twin track approach for blue and green hydrogen. And obviously the UK is uniquely placed in targeting both blue and green hydrogen as part of the twin track approach, but also support other kinds of hydrogen generation technologies also. So our current priorities reflect this move to the 100% reduction in emissions target. So we have a priority in net zero and decarbonisation, but also we recognise that we do need to take a systems approach and think that, you know, research has a really important role to play in this landscape as well. So what needs to happen? Well, essentially, we think we can look at this in three kind of ways. So obviously taking a whole systems approach, we need to reduce the demand for greenhouse gas intensive products, processes and services. We need to remove greenhouse gas emissions that we cannot avoid or for processes that cannot be decarbonised. And we also need to replace processes and services with those that don't emit greenhouse gases in the first place. Now, obviously, we've seen a lot of activity over the last few months. There's a lot going on in this area with the publication of the 10-point plan, the energy white paper. We've seen plans from DFT around the transport hub in the Tees Valley. And there's also been some funding associated with some of this. So there's £1 billion associated with the Net Zero Innovation Portfolio. The Net Zero Hydrogen Fund has been announced. And we've seen the publication of the Industrial Decarbonisation Strategy, as well as deployment projects being announced from the ISCF Industrial Decarbonisation Challenge, which will primarily focus on producing and using blue hydrogen. And of course, we're expecting the hydrogen strategy later in 2021. So where is the role for research and innovation in all of this? Well, research in particular has, obviously, we understand that we need to deploy and that we need to start learning by doing. However, research also has a role here at all levels of development. It has a role to support deployment, to ensure that it's successful and to answer the questions that deployment will inevitably throw up when we do so, to develop technologies and solutions that are not quite ready yet and to unlock their deployment, and also to discover solutions to problems that we cannot yet solve. So these could be all kinds of problems, including discovering things that we don't even know will have a very disruptive effect yet. So UKRI is already doing quite a lot in this area. So we have, I've highlighted here in red and bold some of the hydrogen investments that we have specifically in hydrogen and fuel cells. So we have the Hydrogen and Fuel Cells Supergen Hub, and associated centres for doctoral training in sustainable hydrogen and fuel cells and their fuels. We have recently funded the Transport Network Plus, a range of them, one of which is specifically targeting hydrogen for transport. And we've also recently funded a green ammonia demonstrator, which is based at the STFC Harwell campus. But as well as this, we are involved in a number of investments which I guess touch on hydrogen in various different ways. So recognizing that this is not a technology problem alone, we do need to tackle the social, economic and environmental issues associated with the future hydrogen economy. We have UKRI as a whole has investments in all of these areas. So I've noted some of these centres here, as well as whole systems investments such as UKIRC, CREDS and the Centre for Energy System Integration, which kind of takes a systems of systems approach to understanding the challenges associated with integration of energy systems. And we recognise that we'll need to understand this for hydrogen too, as well as the trade-offs associated with hydrogen. So if we use it in one sector, what does that mean for another, and so on and so forth. And although we have a lot of activity going on in this area already, we do recognise that there is more to do. So UKRI's energy programme priorities include research and innovation to support the growth of the hydrogen economy. And we look at this across the whole supply chain, so including production, distribution, storage and use across various sectors. We have a priority in terms of supporting the wide-scale deployment of CCUS, reducing energy demand and other clean energy technologies, including the renewables, which we could couple to green hydrogen production. And as such, we are working in partnership with a number of other stakeholders to develop strategies and plans in various areas. So we are engaging with BEIS, the Department for Transport, the Energy Systems Catapult and others, and Ofgem, to name a few, on our hydrogen strategy. We're engaging with decarbonising transport with the Department for Transport, and we're very looped in and engaged with the Tees Valley Transport Hub activities, and are trying to understand how the research can support that, as well as others, and obviously looking at whole systems approaches as well. But not only that, we are also looking at increasing our own environmental sustainability of our operations, activities and programs, obviously trying to practice what we preach. However, we are in uncertain times in the UK, and so a forward look for UKRI is somewhat difficult at this moment in time. This is a time of high pressures on public spending, and we are preparing for various outcomes across the whole of UKRI on the back of the spending review in November. Although currently we are still uncertain about what this will mean for UKRI and for EPSRC. So we just continue to engage and have those conversations with various stakeholders while we wait for this outcome in order to plan for the future. And finally, I just wanted to touch on COP26, which is obviously the big event of the year later in November. Just to say that UKRI are shaping a submission for the event at COP26 in relation to hydrogen in particular. It has been identified as one of our priorities, and we are seeing this as a point in time. So we will be engaging with events before and after COP26 as well, especially with international partners and networks such as the Decarbonate Network and others, and potentially looking into having an engineering net zero showcase later after COP26 as well, although I must add that that's not quite confirmed.